This is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Happy New Year to you all. I hope you all had a good Christmas break and holiday recently. And today what I'm doing is I'm doing a talk through of the top finds from last year, which is 2023. So for all those new people that have subscribed recently in the last month or so, what I would advise you to do is to look at the images that I'm showing you and then go back through, if you're interested in any of them and want to find out more and see the gigapans and the original images and everything else and find out more information on each thing, you can go back through my videos from last year and find each one of these in my playlists and videos from last year. Okay, so if there's buildings you want to see, you can go to my buildings playlist. If there's UFOs, you can go to the UFO playlist, and so on. There's lots and lots of playlists covering all these things. Under each video, there are links that you can link to, which will give you the gigapans of each image. Okay, in other words, the overview of the area where the images were clipped from. Okay, these are all image clips. Some of them are individual images, like this one here, and some of them are taken from gigapans that I put together from sometimes hundreds of images of the Mars surface taken by either the Curiosity rover or the Perseverance rover. So let's start with this one. This is the Mars Flying V UFO, as I called it. Now, this I still think is one of the best finds on Mars ever. It's absolutely incredible, really. And I still think a lot of people just don't believe it's real because it's too good. Because what we have here is some kind of drone or aircraft. I estimate the wingspan of this thing to be between 8 and 12 feet, but it could be as much as 20 feet. But I'm thinking around 10 or 12 maybe. In the original video I said about 8, but 8 to 12, and I think that's about right. Now, I always use the hover zoom magnifier, so what I advise you do with any of my videos and any of the gigapans you see is to download hover zoom magnifier, which I have here, and it attaches to any browser, and you can use it to look at these images a lot more closely, and you can set the level of zoom exactly right for your setup, and you can look at these things up close and see the details that I'm pointing out. Okay, and this thing is incredible. I mean, there are some different clips I've got of it here. I've just got short clips of each thing in this video because this is just an overview of my best finds from last year. And one or two of the finds I'm going to show you are not my finds, they're from other people. But this was crazy because on this one, not only do we have this V-shape or flying wing-shaped craft or drone, which has like a little tailpiece just here, but we also have this thing coming down from above. This is a raw image, by the way, the bottom one here. And we have a projectile coming right towards it. Okay, there's a close-up of the projectile. Okay, there's a projectile on the end, and that's the trail behind it. So this is some kind of missile, I would say, and it's heading straight for this thing. So my guess on this is that this is an alien drone. It's not one of ours. It's not a NASA drone. It's not Chinese. It's not Russian or anything like that. Okay, I think this is an alien drone. It's come in close to the rover, Curiosity rover, on Sol 2948 here, and it's coming close to observe what it's up to and maybe take photographs of it. So this is a spy drone coming in close, and it banked hard left here, possibly to avoid this projectile that's coming down. Now, this projectile, I actually think, may have been fired from another craft or a satellite that's owned by us. And it's like a warning shot to get rid of this thing, or to scare it off and keep it away from the rover. There are multiple satellites in Mars orbit, most of them American, but there are other countries up there as well, including Russia and China and other countries, right? India, right? Now, is it possible that They know that there's activity on the surface and above the surface, and that they're trying to protect their own stuff that's on the ground, like Perseverance rover, like Curiosity rover. Is that possible? Yes, it is. We know that satellites can fire stuff. They can fire lasers, they can fire missiles, rockets or whatever. They can do it. The technology has been there for a while now. So who knows? But this is very, very strange, this one. And I still can't quite believe it, to be honest. Here's a close-up. Now, here you can clearly see this is a raw image, right? This clip here is straight from the raw image. It's only been enlarged, right? So I haven't colorized this or anything. I haven't done anything to it. And in fact, in the video of this, you can actually see that I took a screenshot and showed you the actual page, the NASA page with this image on it. And you can see this thing clearly in the image on the page, right? So none of this has been altered, apart from size, okay? There's a projectile. There's the flying V-shaped drone. And here's a close-up of the projectile here. So you can see the projectile there. It's not very clear. It's quite a long way off. It's about 100 meters away, this drone. 120 meters, I estimate. It could be a bit less or a bit more. This thing is quite large. It's about 10 feet. If you look closely here, you can actually see these details. The two wings, the body, and like a tail sticking out, and a fin there, like two fins sticking out. So it's got two fins, and it's got two wings. None of our drones are like this. The drone helicopter used by the Perseverance rover, which is 2.3 thousand kilometers away from here, doesn't have any wings. It has blades. It's a little helicopter. It's nothing like this. So this is not one of ours. I've referenced this. I've checked it with all the drones, possible drone designs we have on Earth, and it doesn't match any of them. Okay? So there was that. Basically, I still think one of the best finds ever. Here it is, the actual cover of the video. I did a couple of videos on this, and there's also a whole series of videos that I did about UFOs on Mars, which I found last year in 2023. And this is another one. This is what I call the torch UFO. This actually has a beam coming from it, which may be caused by the extreme brightness of this object overloading the sensor slightly on the rover camera. So it's like a lens flare almost. The actual object itself isn't a lens flare, but because it's so bright, it's actually reflecting this beam of light coming from it. That's what I think. I'm not sure, but that's what I think. And this was a cool one. This was from Sol 3110 NavCam. If you want to find UFOs from the Curiosity rover, go through the NavCam right images, right? NavCam R. That's where they are. And you can see on this one, it's kind of a cross shape. There's a negative of it. Actually, it's more like a saucer shape in this one. If you see it in the negative, there's that beam. But that beam's kind of weird, right? What that may be is actually where the thing is flown in, here, and has slowed down and almost stopped. So it's coming from this direction. It may have flown in. This may actually be where it's moved during the time it took for the shutter speed on the camera. But that may be where it's moved. So that was an interesting one, the torch UFO. And there's lots of similar shaped ones in the area that I've seen, including this one, which is the, I call it the perfect UFO, because it's like a perfect saucer shape. Now the cool thing about this one is that there's not a lot of detail in it, but the shape is absolutely superb. A perfect shape, I would say. Look at that. Now obviously this has been enlarged, so we've got a little bit of pixelation around the edge. In reality it'd be harder than that, right? But this is quite a long way off. But it actually, I thought this was a long way off, right? Because this is up in the sky. You can't see any ground in this image, so there's no scale reference to that. But I noticed when I found this, I thought, hang on a minute, this looks familiar, right? Here's a close-up. There's a negative there, you can see the shape of it. I thought, this looks really familiar. And then I realised that I did a video about a UFO that was spotted by one of the other rovers. And I'll show you that in a sec. It matches up one that was spotted by a different rover thousands of miles away, okay? Now, this was weird. Now, I didn't do a video about this, right? This one coming up. This is really super weird. I don't quite understand what this thing is. It's like a rod, a weird rod. This may actually be an image glitch or some kind of object that's overloading the sensor again, right? Now, it appears, I was going to call it the flying carpet, or I don't know whether it's a rod or whatever. It's very, very strange. I'll show you the magnifier. We got this long rod shape with a part on top, like a reflection or something sticking up there, right? There's the actual negative, right? There's the thing on top, and there's the object, which is perfectly straight. Now, the reason I think this may actually be a glitch or some kind of reflection is because it follows the pixels exactly. Now, if it was a UFO flying around, I wouldn't expect it to be dead straight and line up perfectly with the pixels in the image. And when you see the image up close, you'll see what I mean. There's an image close-up coming up now. Right, here we go. Now, when you actually look at the image properly, up close, you will see that the line absolutely lines up with the pixels. In other words, it's too perfect. In other words, it's too straight. I would expect if this was flying around for it to be slightly angled one way or another, at least. But who knows, this may actually be some kind of rod UFO. And it just happened to fly past dead straight, dead level with the camera, which is leveling. There is a level on the rover which levels the camera, keeps it straight. So who knows? But very odd, this one. Another rod UFO. It may be a glitch. I don't know. But glitches don't tend to look like this, and this is the only one I've seen that's this clear and relatively close to the rover. There are other rod ones which are not as clear as this, which are angled and flying in different directions. You'll see one or two of those in a minute. So there are lots of these UFOs that I found. This one is from Sol 3282. Now, this is what I call the Mars UFO dogfight, which is basically a whole bunch of objects flying around. One of them is like an aeroplane shape, which is very similar to the one I showed at much higher altitude. This one here, which clearly has wings, and I think this is the tail end here, the longer bit. Wings here, and the nose at the front. There's the negative, right? It's kind of a cross shape. But we're seeing it from an angle, obviously. It's not coming straight. We're not looking down or up at it. We're looking across at it. So we're not seeing the true wing configuration on this, right? And then there's these other objects nearby. One here, one here, one here. And they seem to be engaged in some kind of activity with each other, either chasing or avoiding each other. And there's even an object zooming off up here, which isn't very clear, shooting off upwards, right, from this direction. So that's why I call it a dogfight, because it actually looks as if they're almost kind of like fighting each other or chasing each other or something. Here's the close-up. See that a bit closer. Right, there's that one, the main one. We've got one here, we've got a bright one here, and we've got another one here which seems to be blurred underneath. So that's manoeuvring, right? And this one seems to be going after one or two of these things. And there's that one shooting off up here, not very clear. Just there. Okay? Crazy, absolutely crazy. God knows what's going on here, but basically there's a lot more activity in Gale Crater. This is Curiosity Rover again, this one. There's a lot more activity going on there than NASA will ever tell you, right? And I have shown some of these things. The Flying V UFO, I've actually shown to people from NASA on Twitter to try and get a response from them. And I asked one of the guys from the Curiosity team, I said, can you explain this, the Flying V UFO? And I gave the picture and a link to the video, and he just replied, no, N-O, in capital letters. That was it. I'm not going to mention his name. He's quite famous, this guy. He's got a beard and he's on Twitter a lot. That's all I'm going to say, right? Uh, yeah. These people, they know there's stuff going on there, but they're not allowed to say anything, right? That isn't really their fault. As with a lot of these things with the mainstream media and the newspapers and the TV news, they only tell you what they're allowed to tell you, right? They're gagged and controlled very, very carefully. Now, this is another rod UFO. This was cool, this one, because it seems to have objects coming out of it, right? There's the rod in negative. There it is as we see it. And we've got these objects coming out at the end. It's kind of like a pen shape, like an ink pen almost. It's not a strict rod. It's more kind of cigar shaped, or a pen like a shaped like an old ink pen. Very strange, right? And we got these ball things coming out at the end, which I think are smaller drones. This is Sol 3317, so this is not far from that one I just showed you, right? In the previous image. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. And if you want to find out more about these UFOs, you can go back to my channel and click on the UFO playlist, and it will go into a lot more detail in each video about these. And you'll get the links and everything as well to the images as well. Okay, so there was also these streaks, 2 streaks in the same image here. Black streaks. Now, meteors don't show up as black streaks. They show up as white streaks or bright coloured streaks in the sky. But these are black. And there's one here and one there. That's the raw image there. This has been colourised. This one seems to be going up, and this one appears to be going that way, although it's hard to say. They may both be going up. And I think I theorised that maybe one of these was targeting the other, right? Like a missile. Who knows? But, I mean, this is a mystery. There's not quite enough detail in this to actually say either way. But to get 2 of these in one image is absolutely insane. You're going to have to go through thousands of images to get one like that. Literally, thousands to find anything like that in one. Here's the close-up. So who knows what these are? If these were actual meteors hitting the atmosphere of Mars, then they would look like this. They would look white or whitish or yellowish, right? They wouldn't look like this, which is like a black streak of smoke. Okay? They simply wouldn't look like that. I know the atmosphere is a bit different on Mars. It's a lot thinner, and it's mostly carbon dioxide. But, you know, they would still burn up if they were going fast enough, obviously, and appear like this. So who knows? They must be missiles. That's all I can say. They're not meteors. Then there was this one there. A lot of people said it looked a bit like Saturn. It may be. But the problem is, if it was Saturn, they would be angled like this, by the way. So maybe, but what's weird about this one is, it's a long way up. This is really big, I think, this one. And it's a long, long way up, thousands of feet up, right? So this is high altitude. But if you look at the part sticking out, this part is much longer than this part. Now, if this was Saturn, there would be an elliptical line going around it where you have the rings of Saturn, and they would be the same length either side. You wouldn't have this discrepancy between one side and the other. So I don't think this is Saturn. I think this is actually a UFO. And these are wings. And we're seeing it from a funny angle, and we're seeing part of this wing more than that part on the right there. So that's my theory. There it is in negative. You can see how this one is much shorter and wider, and this is longer and thinner here, right? Not a lot of detail there. That's like miles and miles away, right? And really bright in the image, actually. There's also this kind of weird streak. There's a bunch of these, and I don't know what these are, but this may actually be a meteor because it's coming in bright. And the only reason I think it may not be a meteor at the same time is that it's not straight. Meteors tend to travel in a straight line and then break up as they come in. This is kind of like a weird zigzaggy pattern, like a streak of light. It's very odd. It's very, very odd. There's the negative of it. And you'll see more like this, which are slightly zigzagged. Now, the zigzagging is partly exaggerated by pixelation, right? So in reality, it's smoother, probably. Whereas it looks quite angular on here. But I really don't understand what that is. Because, like I said, if it was a meteor, you'd have a long streak coming in, right? And they come in from all angles. Sometimes they go up or down. But occasionally, you see them below the horizon, right? Now, meteors don't do that. This one isn't below the horizon, but the one that coming up in a minute is. And then there was these. These may well be meteors, but would there be one following another? And would one of them, like this one on the left here, have this weird shape at the front? Like an aeroplane. It's got like a nose coming down here, right? And then one behind it. What the hell's going on here? Are these clouds? Possible. But that one on the end, it's got like a hard nose on it, just there. Detail. Just there. Now this one here is the one I was on about earlier, the perfect UFO, was spotted here near the Spirit rover. Now the Spirit rover contact years and years ago and was sent to Mars like about 20 years ago. And contact, I think in about 2015 or 16. So it contacted years ago. And now here's that one I showed earlier, the perfect UFO. This one's in Gale crater. And this one's near Gusev crater, which is thousands of miles away. And it's exactly the same design, shape. And probably the same object, or at least the same type of object, or manufactured by the same people, right? Or owned by the same people, whoever they may be, right? There's the actual one in Gale crater, which I showed earlier. And there's the actual close-up of it. There's the negative. And then this is the one near Gusev crater, but it's banked over and is in a different flying configuration here. So it's banking and turning, right? So it's round the other way. But it's the same one. It's identical. It has a longer part and a shorter wing sticking out. If they are wings, I suppose they are. Right? It's identical. There it is there. Gale crater, and this was near Gusev crater, thousands of miles away. And this one's banking, obviously. Now this is fairly close to the rover, I would say, so it's actually not very big. I initially thought this was much larger, this one. But I'm now thinking this is only a few feet in size. Maybe it's probably less than 10 feet. It's probably more like 5. And it's about 100 meters away from the rover. So a lot of them are similar size. They're not huge. You couldn't fit a person inside these, a human, because they're too small. So they're probably drones, or the pilots are tiny, right? Who knows? Who knows? But they're probably just drones. They're probably automatic robots. Spy drones, okay? We have spy drones. There's no reason to believe that extraterrestrials wouldn't also have spy drones and are spying on our robots on another planet, i.e. the rovers, keeping an eye on what they're up to. Now, are these drones operated locally by people on Mars, beings on Mars, within, say, 50 miles or 10 miles or 5 miles or just a mile? Are they operated locally, remotely, by somebody? Or are they completely autonomous and fly off to some mothership somewhere near Saturn or something, or hidden somewhere behind some meteor or something. Is that possible? Because there is a lot of this activity. Until I last year did my massive search through all the NavCam images and found so many UFOs, I didn't realise there was so much going on. There was only one or two other researchers in the world who were going through all these images. And one of them died, the great Terry Burnett, who was a friend of mine, died recently. He was one of the few people that went through all the NavCam images. And over the years, spotted many of the UFOs that we show on Mars. So a lot of credit must go to him, God bless his soul, because he did a lot of that work, that groundbreaking work over the years, and went through the tedious sets of images from the NavCam on the rovers, the NavCam images, which there are probably 1 million of altogether, right? If you go through all the rovers, it's insane. Okay, so a lot of credit must go to him. And here's the illustration of this one here. This is Gale Crater, and this is Near Gusev Crater. Spirit rover and Curiosity rover, thousands of miles apart. Okay, the same object. There's a slight difference in the central part on this one on the left, but that's because it's a different angle, and it's closer. So we're seeing it from a totally different angle, right? So these drones are following the rovers, and I think when the Spirit rover died years ago, it left that area and went to go and spy on Curiosity rover thousands of miles away. Flew from one area thousands of miles around and up to Gale Crater, which in itself is absolutely mental. Now here's one of these cross-shaped or winged UFO craft on Mars, and this is insane, this one. This is high altitude, so this is big. This is like a bomber, right? This is like a bomber-sized aircraft. And it's up here. This is a clip straight from the raw image here on the left, right? There it is, up there. And as you go down, you'll see the edge of the crater. There's another object here, right? That little black blob there. That's not a glitch, that's actually something moving around. And that's the edge of the crater, which is about 20, 30 miles from the rover. That point there is approximately 3.5 kilometers high, from there to there. And this distance from this line here, the bottom of the edge, rim of crater, the actual Gale Crater, is about 30 odd miles from this point down here, right? Which is the foreground. That gives you an idea of scale. This thing is miles up above the crater up here, and I think is one of the main craft that may be shooting at these drones that are getting too close to the rover, right? Who knows? I don't know. Now, if you look at this one, we've got a cross shape. These longer parts are the body, and these other wider parts are the wings. And there's quite a reflection coming off this. This is a bright object. It's in bright mode. They're either in dark mode or bright mode. When they're in dark mode, they look like that. When they're in bright mode, they look like this. This is why I always show a negative, to give you an idea of what to look for, because sometimes they appear black and sometimes white, okay? And not only that, sometimes the negative shows better shape, okay? When they're really bright like this, it's hard to focus on the actual shape of the object. So you can actually see that this thing is cross-shaped, okay? I mean, that projectile that we saw in the first clip I showed you, which is coming straight towards the Flying V drone, which is right at the beginning of the video, so I showed you the first one, the projectile may have come from this, all right? Something at altitude. miles above the crater, because the flying V drone came in close. It came right down here and swooped down. The projectile came towards it and it banked and turned, and that's when that photograph was taken, as it was banking right, doing a hard bank turn, right? So this may actually be one of the things that was shooting at it. I mean, I can't prove that, but it was photographed, this one, around the same time, within a month or two, a few months of that last one, the flying V drone. So this may be one of the things firing objects at other objects like the flying V drone. Who knows? Pure speculation, I can't prove it, but there is something going on. And there are loads of these sort of odd-shaped ones. This is a winged one, but it's just from a funny angle. They're quite small, some of these, and they come in really close to the rover. And these two are the same. These two bottom ones here on the right, there's close-ups here. Because if you look at the shape of this one, the other bit sticking out here, very similar to this one. There's also a bit sticking out at the bottom on that one, but on the top on this. So this is almost like this one in reverse, flipped over. One's in light mode here, and the other one's in dark mode, but I think they're the same object. And these were photographed on different days, right? But they go from light to dark and dark to light. And there's the weird little kind of drone with the squarish wings. Much wider wings, this one. Okay? There's lots of activity going on near the rovers, and NASA refused to even comment on what they might be. Okay? Absolutely refused. And I have sent it to a number of them. They won't reply, or they just say no in big capital letters, right? Another streak drone here, or UFO. Another one here, highly reflective. This is more slightly elliptical shaped, this one. Not a lot of detail on this one, but nice shape to it. Similar to this one. A lot of them are rod shaped like this, okay? There's a close-up. I mean, you'll see these all the time. I'd say you'd find one of these every 1,000 images or so. So you're going to have to look through a hell of a lot to find any, but you will find some in the navcam right images, right? And the left ones sometimes, and sometimes the other cameras pick them up as well. Now, this is my other favourite find of the UFOs anyway, and this is quite astonishing, even more so than the flying V drone in many ways, because the same object was photographed from different angles on different days, right? Both above the Curiosity rover, and one of them here at the top was, I think, flying this way to the right, and then we see the same object from behind with this aerial hanging down here, right? Look up here on the right, got an aerial hanging down. There's the negative, you can see it there, and this is the same object on a different day, about 400 days later or so, about a year later, same area, about the same distance from the rover, this time facing away from us, but with the same weird, like, aerial type object hanging down. Right, this is the side view of it there. You can see this aerial just about making out there, but in the negative it shows up really well just there. So that's a thin metal, I would say, thing hanging down like an aerial. Okay, there's the body. It's got this bit sticking out the front, but at the top, this is identical. Bit at the top, either side, and then we have the same thing sticking down here, right? But this, I think, is a bit closer to us, this one. And we can see it seems thicker, the aerial, as we're seeing it from this angle. All right? Unbelievable. So, as I said in this video, I actually think that they're coming in and they're not only taking photos of the rover, but are also intercepting the signals from the rover before they even get to the satellite and then are sent to Earth. right? With all the information, because these rovers are not just taking photographs for us to look at and doing a bit of geology on the ground. There's other instruments on these rovers and a different system. There's an X-band system which is used by the military, and they're doing their own stuff, right? And they're probably they're probably using the same sensors on the rover, but they're probably much higher res images coming down, which we're never seeing, right? And they're recording stuff like they're doing ground penetrating radar on some of the rovers and landers. We don't ever see that data from the Perseverance. Here's a close up. So I think these are coming in. They're getting within earshot. In other words, they're coming in within a couple of hundred meters from the rover. They tend to come in, I think, about 120 meters, and then what they're doing is they're picking up the signals before we even get them. Not just the photographs, the digital images and all that, but all the other stuff the rovers do, a lot of which we never see and don't get to see anything of. The military stuff on these rovers is secret, and they're doing other scans, probably recording sound and doing all sorts of things we don't know about, right? There are other instruments on these rovers, not just the ones that they told us publicly, okay? There's more going on here than meets the eye, that's for sure. And these things seem to be coming in close to record what they're doing and the information that they're sending back to Earth. This is why I don't think these are ours, because why would ours come in so close and get seen like that, right? They wouldn't need to. We can see the rovers from satellite anyway. So we've got no need to send drones in to keep an eye on them, because we can see them from space, right? The MRO keeps a very close eye on the rovers, right? Constantly photographing them, tracking them. So we know exactly where they are and what's going on. You know, we wouldn't be sending these things in as well and buzzing around and getting photographed. That would be stupid. There's a close-up of that one. It's actually better to see it further back like this. It's clearer. Just use the magnifier. There it is. There's the aerial. With the little wings. It's kind of almost round. Sort of squarish round sort of shape to it. See that mound in the background, right? That's the same mound we saw by that high-altitude winged UFO. See that mound in the distance? So they keep appearing in the same area, right? So that high-altitude one was way above this, but we got that same mound on the like that hump in the distance, right? There, as in that previous image of the high-altitude one I showed you, which is kind of cross-shaped, looks like a bomber or something, right? So that's miles up above these. So these may be coming down from that other aircraft that's higher up. And it's sending these smaller drones down to have a look at the rover. Who knows? But this is the same one, photographed about a year after that interceptor drone one, which is the same thing. It's the same thing coming in again and again, right? So they keep coming back. Why would they keep coming back? I think they keep coming back because they're actually coming back to re-intercept more information from the rovers. Because they must realise that the rovers are sending stuff to the MRO satellite, which is then sent to Earth. So they know when the transmissions are, and they're coming in at certain times to pick them up and record them, which in itself is mind-boggling, right? Absolutely mind-boggling. And there's a bunch of these weird ones like this one. I call this the snake drone because it looks like a kind of snake. Now this may be the same one we saw, that weird sort of zigzaggy one I showed earlier, the bright one. I think this may be the same object as that, but it's in dark mode because it's very similar kind of zigzag shaped to it. The other one's coming down like this at an angle and is very bright. This one's going the other way. So a lot of these, I think, are the same things. But sometimes they're in bright mode, and sometimes, like this, they are in dark mode. You don't see a lot of detail with a lot of these because they're not that close to the rover and they're not very big. This one is probably only 6 foot long or something like that. It may only be 5 feet. I don't know exactly. You can see how angular that is, and it's sharp. So it's not that far away. So it's not hundreds of meters away. And we're seeing tight detail here, tighter detail, which means it's closer to us, right? Because these angles are quite tight and not as blurred as some of the others, right? So that's closer. And then there's loads of objects on the ground, which I'm going to go through now very briefly. I may skip over some of these because there's too many really to go through, but I'll give you a brief. This is crazy, this one. I called it the Doog, right? Now this is a different rover. This is Perseverance rover, which is the new one, which has only been up there a couple of years now. And the images are much better quality. They're not brilliant, but they're pretty good. Some are way better, I would say. This is crazy. And this is really small. This object here is only probably about 4 inches across and a few inches tall here. Got this boulder behind it. And we got this weird like little dog head thing sticking out. With an eye here and a nose there. And 2 ears. There's an ear there and like a little dog. I mean, could it get any more insane? And there's lots of weird things like this on the ground. Like the Egyptians did on Earth. I think the Martians, often, the richer Martians anyway, were often buried with little figurines and objects and little jars and bottles and things like that, and bowls maybe of stuff, offerings or whatever to whatever gods they were worshipping, perhaps. Similar to the Egyptians. And a lot of these things we see on the ground are exposed burials, and a lot of the bone and stuff is long gone. Sometimes we see mummified remains. I'll show you some of them in a minute. And sometimes we see some of the objects which were buried with them or next to them. Okay? And I think a lot of these things are little figurines and pottery and things like that. Okay? That's my explanation, because I've seen so many of these now. And some of them are super weird. And it's insane. And then there was this large thing. This actually, a lot of the people from NASA showed this as well. This is just a couple of rocks, or a rock. They call it the donut rock or something. And it's just been hollowed out. Now, a lot of this stuff would initially have been underwater. This is a lake bed, right? So it's been eroded by water, and then when the lake bed dried out, when there was the cataclysm on Mars and all the water kind of either froze or evaporated or whatever, since then it's been wind eroded. So it's had 2 sets of erosion, water erosion and then wind erosion, which has carved it out. And it's not that unusual, but there is a lot of people showed it. It just looks pretty cool. And this is Perseverance 832, so fairly recent. We're up to over 1,000 now on the Perseverance rover. 1,010 I'm doing now, 1,020 sort of area. So yeah, not that far back. Fairly recent, that one. Not that amazing if you ask me, but a nice image. And a good example of 2 types of erosion there. But then there was this. Now this was really cool. And lots of people showed this on Twitter and everything as well. So I don't claim to have found this first or anything. This is Sol 907, so also quite recent. And Jim Miller, a researcher friend of mine, said that he thought this may be a millstone, and I tend to agree with him, researcher Jim Miller, because it looks like it may have been used to grind grain by hand. And you would sort of roll a rock round this and grind the grain down, or process other types of seed type stuff, like some kind of grain or something similar, right? This is about 1 foot across, roughly, maybe a bit bigger. And then there's the Mars alien coffin, and this was a recent video I did. And this is from a really great gigaplan, which is well worth checking out, which took me about a month to get it to work. Huge gigaplan, the biggest ever, I think, from the Perseverance. It was about 300 images or something. Absolutely huge, right? And right in the middle of it, near the rover, is this thing on the ground, which looks like a sarcophagus with an alien skull here at one end, fossilized. And a lot of them do have these big egg-shaped, elongated skulls, as I've shown before, and more are coming up. There's what I think is the skull. You can actually see eye detail here, here, and here. And this is an eroded and broken down sarcophagus, I think, possibly. Right? You can even see an arm like coming in here. Now, much like the Egyptians, they were wrapped in a shroud and often buried in a body-shaped coffin, carved out of stone. Yeah, the inner part may have been lined with wood or something, I don't know. But that's what I'm seeing here, okay? And it's not the only one. This is one of a bunch of similar finds on Mars over the years that I've made and other people have made of sarcophagi, okay? And there are other examples. So if you watch this video, there will be other examples shown way better than this as well. Okay, so it's not the only one. Here's the close-up. Let's pause it. Have a quick look at that. There's the skull, I think. Eye there, right? And then we have this arm detail coming up here. Then we have these details here with a weird thing on the end. But I think that is a sarcophagus with a dead alien inside, or dead Martian. Okay? And a lot of them, I've shown well over 100 skulls so far, have really big elongated skulls, like some of the ones we find in Peru. The Paracas people of Peru. Nazca, right? With their big elongated skulls. And Brian Forster shows them a lot on his channel, so check him out as well. He's great. Also, like myself, been on Ancient Aliens as well. Just because we've been on Ancient Aliens a couple of times, people like me, I think Jim's been on it as well recently, or similar programs, doesn't mean we agree with everything they say, We're just showing what we've found. That's all we're doing. And here's one of these burials, here, right? I'll show you the raw one first, and you can barely see anything. But there's an elongated head here, and there is a sarcophagus in here, or at least a stone leaning up against it, right? This may be a bit more crude, but when you turn it round, like I've done here, and then enhance it, you can see this is a elongated alien skull. There's the eye socket, there's the nose, there's the teeth, and you can even see those teeth in the raw image there. I can just about make them out. I haven't added them. And then the head is rested on this little cushion-shaped rock. We got ear detail on here as well, just here, hanging down. Right, there's the chin. It's a funny angle, and this is way off on a ridge. And this whole area was like probably a structure around it, and it's all kind of broken down and eroded away. And this thing has survived. Okay, so there are multiple burials in the area, and you see them in both craters. They're not specific to one part or the other, they're both. Here's another one. Not very clear, this one. This is much smaller. This is only a few feet long, maybe 5 actually, from there to there. There's the head, and there's the actual structure it's kind of built onto, right? Like you would see in a cathedral where you have these kings with their tombs, right, lying down. And they're usually made of bronze or stone or something, Very similar stuff going on here. There's the head. You can see eye detail in there. 2 eyes, nose, and a sort of mouth there, and a chin. Right. Not a lot of detail in this, but there's a weird thing right there as well. Look at that. Like a hand-shaped object with fingers. Very odd indeed. I don't know what it is, but Absolutely insane. Then there was the spikes. Now this went kind of viral for a while, for a few weeks. Everyone on Twitter shared it. Everyone online shared it. All over Facebook and everything. All the Mars groups shared it. So it did pretty well. It was in the actual press. I sent it to the press, but they didn't show my picture for some reason. They showed some crappy ones that NASA gave them. Whereas mine are much brighter and you can see the shadows better. I mean, like, I just cranked up the contrast, right? You can see these spikes. Some people say they look like fish bones, like a spine. They do a bit. But would they survive? Fish bones are very fine. They wouldn't survive very long. I really don't think they are. I still think that this is more evidence of what I've been saying for many years, which is that a lot of this stuff is actually concrete, and what we're seeing is wire mesh. Metal mesh that's inside holding the concrete together. When it was constructed, the softer concrete material is eroded away by the wind, leaving some of these spiky metal parts sticking out from the concrete. That's what I think it is. And I've shown many examples of this over the years. Okay? And in both craters, but especially Gale crater. There's a nice close-up there. Really cool image. I mean, good close-up detail, right? This is actually the chemistry camera, which kind of zooms right in close. It's a pretty good image, really. More detail than we normally see. And this is the area that was spotted. And there's a whole wall like this, covered in these spikes. Now, a lot of this, I call these razor rocks. A lot of them have got these eroded spikes sticking out. But a lot of it, I do think, is part of the construction underneath what was a wall. And we're seeing the actual internal metal parts, perhaps, exposed by erosion. I'll show you that with a magnifier because there's some great detail in here. Those are these kind of razor sharp spikes sticking out, okay? So you can check all these out. Like I said near the beginning of the video, check out the links under each of my videos. These are the actual cover images for the videos, obviously I'm showing you. And there are many more things in each of these videos, not just what's on the cover. There's often multiples of the same thing. So it's not just like one thing in the video, there'd be like a whole bunch of these, right? Different images and clips and close-ups and everything else, comparative images, that kind of thing. There's the wall, there's the spike, the close-up on the spikes here at the bottom, and there's the wall here. Look at how symmetrically aligned these things are, these layers here, as they go through. Amazing, absolutely incredible. So we do get some good detail on some of these images, not all of them. A lot of them are pretty ropey, but you can sort of tidy them up and brighten them up, and they're not too bad. But sometimes we get good close-ups from some of the cameras on the rover, and they all do different things, the cameras, and some are better than others, right? And this is some of the recent spikes that I found. This one I did a little video on recently, a few weeks back, and this I think is corroded metal, right? And you can actually see how fine and sharp some of these are sticking up, right? Look at this, long pointed parts sticking up like this. That's even got a bit on the end of it. Absolutely insane stuff here. This I think is corroded iron or steel or something similar, right? That's what I think it is, and a very odd shape. Some people have said this looks like it's been obfuscated and covered up with sand. It may well have been. This looks very dodgy, this bit of sand here. Look at this curve. Yes, yeah, I mean, how weird. So there's something really interesting buried here, and we're only seeing parts of it sticking up. Now, does that look like a normal rock to you? It doesn't to me. It's very, very odd. Not only the curvature, that weird sand, which looks kind of fake, but these spikes and eroded metal parts are not standard rocks, not standard sedimentary rocks, as it should be in a lake bed, like we have here. Okay? That's a simple fact. It's just not normal. And we often see this stuff. Here's a closer, brighter one. You can see these spikes sticking out. They're crazy. And this is another recent one as well. And the detail on this is really good. This is a close-up of some of this material. And like I said, it looks like metal, heavily corroded, and very old, I would say. Look at this. This one's got holes, like holes kind of eroded through it. I mean, it's crazy stuff, right? Does that look a normal rock to you? With holes in it like that? This is metal. Eroded, corroded metal. There's one of those spikes sticking up, look. Not straight like the ones on that rock. So I don't think this is the same material as that rock with the spikes. But it's probably metal, right? Look at that. Look at the detail in there, right? Amazing detail in here. This is, look at this bit sticking up here. Absolutely insane. There it is in colour. So we've got these long parts sticking up and layers sandwiched together, right? So this may have been part of some metal object, like a ship or something, or a boat. Who knows? But this is one of the better ones. I mean, the detail in this is quite insane. When you look how good the detail is here. So like I said, get the hover zoom magnifier or any magnifier that you can attach to your browser. There's all different ones you can try out. Some are rectangular, some are round. They're really good. And this stuff makes a lot more sense if you do what I'm doing and you go through my videos and pause them and then have a good look yourself and look at the gear plans, zoom in. So that was really cool, that one. A lot of detail to be seen in some of these close-ups. Then there was this, probably the best find I've ever found on Mars, one of them. One of the top 5 anyway. The Mars Android, okay? This is the skull of a robot or a similar thing. Android, robot, call it what you will. And we've got here, now the problem is if you get too close to this, it doesn't actually work very well. You've got to kind of zoom back a bit to see it properly like this, right? Because when you get too close to these things, it goes a bit out of focus, okay? You need to see them from further back. And then we have here, there's the nose with 2 nostrils, teeth, maxilla, there's an eye there, there's the other one, forehead coming round. And here we got an ear part here. And then we got all these like little levers and weird metallic interlaced and overlapping parts, right? Look at this. This one goes under, that one goes under and over. This one goes behind this one, then over that one, then up here into the ear part, which is kind of round here. This is an android, right? It's a robot. That's what it is. I mean, I was flabbergasted when I found this thing. There's the raw image. Now, the problem is with these Perseverance images, the mass cam images on it, this is what they look like. Now, it's almost invisible in this picture, which is precisely why they use this kind of yellowy, horrible filter on them. It bleaches all the shadows out, and everything looks the same, right? You just think that was a rock, okay? Until you add a load of contrast and colour correct the image, and they go a bit bluer, like we got now, here. You go bluer, and then you add the contrast in, and you get the shadows popping out, and then you see the real shapes of what you're looking at. Okay, and this is what you start to see. And I've got different versions of it here. This is a bit pale, this one here on the right. There's a negative of it. There's a further back one, and this is probably the best one here. With the right amount of contrast added. If you get the contrast right, then you can see stuff, right? This has been over contrasted, this one. See that eye, you can see the nose there. And this is the better one, where you can see the detail here, look. This is not a rock. It's an android. Skull of a robot. Right? There should be another clip of it coming up there. Here we are. Here's the close-up. And in fact, if you look at the negative, you can see all those overlapping and interwoven parts here, see? Just here. There's the eye. It's there by my cursor. In negative, that's pretty scary looking, right? Look at that. That's insane, right? Amazing detail here. I mean, not as good as it could be, because it's a bit of a distance away. It's about 50 feet from the rover, something like that. So it's a bit blurry. If it was closer, obviously this would be sharper and more defined. But mental, absolutely mental stuff. Blew me away, actually. I still can't quite believe it. Then there's stuff like this. There's all sorts of these all over the place. I've shown loads of these over the years by both rovers, and there are statue parts. Okay, they're both rovers, both the Curiosity and the Perseverance, both happen to land in craters where there were buried cities. Funny that. And there's all these fragments everywhere, and often you see broken statues and objects, skulls, exposed burials, all sorts of things on the ground, even parts of vehicles and stuff like boats and other vehicles. I've even shown things like tanks and stuff, you know, in the past. So go through my videos and you'll see some crazy stuff, not just by these new rovers, but by some of the older ones as well. Not just Perseverance and Curiosity, but Spirit and Opportunity. The tank near Opportunity rover is the one for me. I love tanks anyway, but that blew me away. Wasn't one of my finds, but I did the sort of definitive video on it, really. And that's well worth looking at. So there's lots of this art. That's obviously the head of a statue or something. This is a skull. Loads of these. I must be over around 150, 200 of these now. And this looks like a humanoid skull or human-like skull. This is a statue part attached to what, maybe a grave marker of a head. There's the chin, there's the negative of it. You can see it here. I'll show you with the magnifier actually. There's the eyes, one there, one there. There's the wide nose, mouth and beard, and a sort of helmet coming up to a slight point there. And it's carved onto this kind of marker stone or part of a structure. Now this may be a gargoyle, it may be part of a burial structure like a tomb, part of a building on the corner of a building or just above an entrance. I don't know. Either way, it's Martian artwork, okay? A carving of a head of a possible warrior with a helmet on. We often see them with helmets. They were a warrior race, the Martians. And there were dozens of examples of helmets I found over the years, and also statues wearing helmets. Okay, so they were a martial culture. The word martial itself comes from the word Mars. Okay, martial, warlike. Okay, so you know we see these all over the place. This isn't very big, by the way. It's less than, I'd say it's about a foot from there to there. And there's loads of weird things like these eroded rocks and stuff. This is probably just a rock, maybe part of something, I don't know. As with this, not really sure what that is, just interesting. There's this one. This is a toppled over column with a carved woman on it, okay? This was one of my favourites as well of the year, of 2023. Carved column. Raw image in the middle. Enhanced one on the right and negative on the left. And in the negative, you can see a woman's face, chest, arm coming down, hand here, and there seems to be like an animal carved into the column below her, just here below as well, like I don't know, maybe that's a dress or something, or it could be some kind of reptile or animal here. Hard to say, really. Right, but interesting. Obviously very old and eroded. The head's very thin. I'd imagine it'd be a bit wider than that originally. But it's just been probably eroded away by the wind, okay? Like everything else on Mars in the area has been eroded for thousands of years. There was another very recent one, with a dubious cross shape with dubious connotations from history carved into it. Now, that particular type of swastika shape actually goes back in Indian culture and Asian culture many, many thousands of years. And crosses have been seen on some of the objects before on Mars as well, including one of the sarcophagi that I showed had a cross on it. So a cross may be a universal symbol, you know, not just on Earth. And this type of cross may also be a universal symbol as well. Okay? So I wouldn't read too much into that. This is a helmet-shaped one. Now, this may actually just be a rock, but I don't know if it is. This one here has got a chain sticking out the top. Now, I showed this in a recent video as well, a while back, a couple of weeks ago, whatever. And we've got a strange object here with a chain sticking out the top here. Right, there's the chain at the top. And a weird object, really weird object. Now, this is my favourite one of these rods that I've found so far, because we got context and scale. Now, it's not that far from this kind of mound here, right? And I know that's around 20 or so, 25 feet high. So this is about 50 feet and a bit further away. It's within 150 feet from the rover, maybe 200 feet away, something like that. So it's fairly large. I would say this is about 6 foot long, maybe 8 feet, about the same size as some of those other drones I've shown. That seems to be a common size for these things. And the fact that it's not that blurred means that it's not that far away, right? Because it's quite dark, which means it's closer. If it was further away, it'd be paler and much more pixelated. We get a close-up coming up now, hopefully. So this is one of my favourite rod-shaped ones recently. Here we are. Let's have a look at that with the magnifier. There it is. Now, this is down to pixelation, a lot of this distortion. If you look at it in the raw image here, it's actually clearer. Just there. Okay? So, there's lots of UFO activity. What can I say? I don't understand who owns them, what they're up to. I think they're spying on the rovers. Why else would they be there? Right? They're spying on us. You know, if you start sending robots to other planets, you're going to get into some possible sticky situations, right? And they've obviously worked out that the rovers aren't a threat. But they always keep coming back to check on them just to make sure they're not up to anything weird, right? Then there's the bookshelf, this one. It's not a bookshelf, it's from a structure that's eroded and broken down and looks a bit like a bookshelf, okay? And some of the guys from NASA shared this from the rover team. They actually put it on Twitter, and I thought, oh, that's cool. So they are aware that there are weird things on the ground that don't quite make geological sense, like this, right? With angled parts to it, like that. They know, but they don't say anything about them. They just post them and make a silly comment. Pretend that it's not really real, right? So, yeah, what are these people up to? Then there is this. This is absolutely insane, but not the only one. Fossilized frog or toad on the ground. This is a lake bed, so that would make sense. It was probably in the mud when the cataclysm struck, was frozen. As the water evaporated, it would have frozen very quickly. The atmosphere would have changed rapidly. Like the woolly mammoths were on Earth, that would froze. They were being found recently in parts of Siberia, and they're still in perfect condition. They're frozen. They were frozen like 12,000 years ago, and they're still perfectly preserved. And they could probably even eat them, right? They were blast frozen. They weren't frozen slowly. They didn't fall on the ground and freeze over time. They were frozen in an upright walking position and then iced over, covered in snow and iced over, right? So a lot of these woolly mammoths they've found frozen are stood up, right? They're not like lying on the ground like a dead bit of roadkill. They're actually stood up, right? And I think a lot of this stuff we see on Mars is the same. They may have had theirs around the same time as us. They've also had a nuclear war on Mars, according to Dr. John Brandenburg. Since then, probably, or perhaps way before then, or both. Okay, there's probably been multiple cataclysms on Mars. We've had them on Earth, and we've survived them. We're still here. I would expect there's still to be people living on Mars, probably underground, as I've said before. But we often see these fossilized creatures on the ground. This is one from years ago. This one here, I think was spotted by Jason Hunter, this one. The little frog. This is only a couple of inches long. This is a baby frog, but it's still got a tail. Right, so it's just come out of the juvenile stage and is becoming an adult. But this is huge. This is well over a foot long, right? Possibly a bit bigger, 14 inches, around about 12 to 14 inches from the ass to the nose there. Insane, right? Absolutely insane. There's the negative. You can see the shape of these legs at the back here. Absolutely crazy, right? Unbelievable. Giant fossil. Then there was the door. This is one of my favourite finds of the year. Part of a wrecked aircraft or similar vehicle, I would say. Here's the Mars door. I won't spend too long on this. If you want to see more on any of these things, go back and check out the actual videos, right? There's the handle. There's the window. There's something inside the window. And there's a close-up of the handle there, okay? And in the video, I show some clips of inside the window. There's an object in there with something on it, just there, like a T-shaped shape on it and a Y-shaped thing there. So there's something inside, okay, like symbols, like you would get on an aircraft door, right? Warning symbols, that kind of thing. Very odd, right? And there's like a V shape here, and there's weird stuff. This is a door. I know it's a funny shape, but it's probably partly melted or corroded away, and it's curved, which means it was probably on a curved object, like an aircraft with a curved fuselage, perhaps. Right? Doors on planes ain't straight, like your front door in your house. They're kind of curved. They curve with the shape of the aircraft. So I think this is part of a crash in the area. There's loads of other weird metal fragments all over this area as well. And there's what look like carved statue heads and stuff like that. This is right by that door, by the way. This is Perseverance Rover 959. So go back and check these things and look at the gigapans, right? Because you can see these for yourself. You can actually look at the whole area and see all these things together, some of them. This was right near that door. Okay? So if you've got doors with handles, and then you've got carved rocks, like this one that's like Voldemort, and then you've got, that's overlooking that structure, by the way, which is like half a mile away. You've got these weird mounds, which are kind of like little pyramids and stuff in the crater nearby. This thing looks right down on it. This is on the ridge by the door, looking down, and in the valley, we got these weird mounds with like little ziggurat type details on them, right? This is right to the north of the crater as we're exiting Jezero crater now, right? And there's other little carvings of animals. This looks like a dog, this one with a body and a little pointy nose. Top of the head's missing. There was probably ears on it. Then we have skulls, one of hundreds of examples of similar ones. This one. Another one here. This one's Curiosity Rover. This one is elongated head and with nose and mouth detail. There's even teeth detail in there, which says to me that is actually a mummified skull. There's the teeth there. There's the chin. You can actually see the teeth there in the raw image if you look closely enough. It's there. All this stuff is there, guys. And all these can be verified. I've got all the frame numbers on these. This isn't like some random stuff that you might see on the internet where someone says, oh, I used to work for the military, or I'm a US naval intelligence, counterintelligence officer or something, and tells you loads of stuff about UFOs without showing you a single bloody picture, right? And then everyone follows this guy around, and he goes on all the TV channels, goes on Fox, goes on CNN, goes on all these channels. David Grush I'm talking about, and never shows any pictures. Just says, oh, I spoke to someone who said this, and this man said that, and this bloke said that. And she said that. And then there are these UFOs, and they're probably alien, and they've got recovered technology. Yeah, we've known all this for bloody decades, mate. Well, where have you been the last 50 years? Jesus Christ. Who are these people coming out of the military now, pretending that they're some kind of whistleblower, right? Yeah. You know we can shove that whistle. Jesus Christ. These people, there's lots of so-called experts out there who just talk about stuff, right? They never show you anything. They just say stuff. Oh, yeah, but the UFOs have come from here. They're probably coming from Jupiter or Venus. Never show any evidence whatsoever. They just pontificate. They're going into the same sort of territory as a lot of planetary scientists do, where they just say, oh, if there's life, there's bound to be life somewhere in the universe, but it'd be billions of miles away and light years away, way too far away. We'd never be able to get there. We'd have to invent some new kind of space travel to go to. Bollocks, I say. There's frickin' life on Mars, and there probably still some alive on the surface, underground, right? And there's lots of weird things on the ground that prove that, including sphinxes, skulls, burials, and objects on the ground, wrecked vehicles, metal objects. You name it, it's here. It's like a big, massive, giant scrapyard, burial ground, all kind of mixed up together, jumbled up together, and it's insane. And you often see weird objects on the ground. I think this is part of a boat or some kind of box section of an object. Not sure about this one. But there's loads of stuff like this on the ground that we've seen over the years. I've shown on my channel. Parts of boats, parts of structures, parts of things on the ground, objects that have been smashed up. Lots of these weird sort of gargoyle type things. Loads of crazy stuff. So there's so much to see, and the thing is, it's often difficult to interpret what they are, like this blade-shaped object here. It's often hard to tell what these actually are, but you can tell they're artificial and probably part of some other structure that's buried just below. Another one of my favourite finds here, this was the Mars mesh. Now, this is what I was on about when I was on about concrete construction here. This is in Gale Crater, and there's a bit of a distance from the rover, but you can see that we've got this wire mesh showing through the rock here. Okay? There's no way that that's rock. You've got these kind of triangular parts, you've got these square mesh-like patterns in the rock, which is actual metal rebar or wire mesh that was holding these structures together. So a lot of these structures we see, and a lot of these rocks on the ground aren't even rocks, like the one with the spikes in that I showed earlier. They're actually concrete blocks with wire mesh sticking out. That's what they are. I've shown it up close, I've shown it here. I've shown many examples of it over the years and proved that, I think, more than once. So there we are. So I'm going to call it a day, I think, on this video. I mean, there's still loads of images I haven't shown you here. And there's loads of examples of wreckage like this. We've got loads of weird things on the ground. We've got weird things. This looks like an engine block. We've got loads of crazy stuff on the ground. There's loads of weird objects which just don't make any sense. This one looks a bit like a mobile phone, but it's not. But it does look kind of metallic, this thing. There's loads of crazy objects, and a lot of them are just interestingly eroded bits of metal and rock that happen to look like things we have on Earth. We have little figurines, we have skulls. There's this little figurine here called Jack in the Box, this one, that's inside this little thing here, which may be another example of a burial figurine. We've got weird things like this, which may be an anchor or something, a ship's anchor. And we're seeing it from a funny angle here, right? There's loads of stuff on the ground, and there's loads of skulls like this one that I've shown over the years. I'm getting on for 200 now of these. And we can see the teeth in here, the mouth. There's the eye just there. Unfortunately, the lighting is so bad in some of these images where they use this filter. It bleaches all the detail out. You've got to crank the contrast up to show it. And then you'll see the shapes and what we're actually really looking at, okay? And a lot of these things just don't make any sense. There's this huge skull here. massive elongated skull, which I actually think is a carved object, right? And it was taken from different angles. Look at the teeth here, just here, on the close-up. You can see teeth in there. And again, this is a different day, same object, different angle. It's slightly clearer in some ways. You can see the mouth, the eyes and the nose. And it has this weird triangle carved in the side of it. So this is another weird carving. Some of their art's pretty weird, but I think the Martians were pretty weird, some of them. And some of them had these massive heads. Big elongated heads, like the Nazca skulls of Peru, okay? These weird gargoyles, which are like reptoid or dragon-like shapes, often sticking out of these rocks where there was a building here, okay? I've shown multiple examples of these, and you've even got an eye here, and an ear here, and a nose here. If you look really carefully, you can see the mouth as well. So they're like little dragons and stuff, and reptiles carved into things, and animals. Dogs and cats I've shown many of before as well. Now I thought this was just like a fossilized skull, right? Like some of the ones I've shown before, and you can actually see here, there's the eye, there's another one. There's some teeth in here, see these teeth? This is the chin here. If you look really carefully, there's these metal parts going through it, right? They go right through it, here. In a sort of mesh-like pattern. So some of these objects were actually made with mesh, and then clay was probably put onto the mesh, so there's like an aperture inside. Either that, or this is another weird sort of android head. But what we may be looking at with some of these things is they were constructed objects attached to buildings, and they were made with that same sort of wire mesh that I showed you earlier. And then they used clay or something, or a type of concrete or something, to put on top of it and then shape it. Probably clay, a lot of this stuff, made with clay, with metal inside to hold it in shape. Who knows? But this thing is weird, super weird. Loads of weird stuff like this. So I'm going to call it a day. There was this thing, this is the God of War Ares, or Mars, with a crested helmet up on the ridge. This is Perseverance rover, this one. This is quite a long way from the rover, though, unfortunately. So we don't see a lot of detail on it. It's quite large. This is about 2 foot tall, this head with the crested helmet. There it is, Sol 716. So with all these images, you can look at the Sol number, Perseverance, and then the Sol number. They'll either say Perseverance or Curiosity rover at the top, and the number. So you just look at that number, and then you go into my main Gigapan link in the description, and then look for the Gigapan with that number, and then you'll see these things in context. This was near that burial, the one I showed you with the elongated head. Not the first one I showed near the beginning of the video, but the one after that. This is near there. That's on another mound near here, in the same area. Okay. Thanks for watching. Follow the links. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Please share on social media. Thanks for watching, and Happy New Year, and I'll see you soon.